And welcome into Purple Daily. I'm Phil Mackey. That's Judd Zulgad. We've got Declan Goff producing, as always. And we appreciate everyone who has subscribed to our YouTube channel in the last 30 days or so. This is actually the most subscribers we've ever had in a 30-day period. So thank you. It's been a rough stretch with layoffs at Score North earlier in the month. And we just appreciate everyone who is sticking with us as we pump out daily Vikings content. YouTube.com/Score North and the Purple Daily podcast feed. Apple, Spotify, and scorenorth.com. And gentlemen, here's my question for you all today. Every year, you can sit and you can go up and down the schedule 1 through 16, weeks 1 through 17, games 1 through 16, and say, yep, that should be a win, that should be a loss. But every single year, it seems like the Vikings lose a game that they probably should have won or fall into a trap of some kind. Like it's just sort of, and it's not just unique to the Vikings. As you look at the Vikings 2020 schedule, how many trap games do you potentially see? And trap game defined as a game that on the schedule and on paper, you would ordinarily expect the Vikings to be favored or to win.
So the amount of parity now in this league, Phil Mackey, is so great that I don't see a ton because there are games I think the Vikings are going to win, but I don't see them as being like they lost to the Falcons, and that's completely shocking.
Yeah.
So those don't, I think, by the way you just defined it, qualify as trap games. There are very few that do, but I will give you probably a couple that I see. First of all, if they weren't in the NFC North with Detroit, I would say the Detroit game at home would be a trap game.
Yeah, it's also
it's a divisional game.
It's sandwiched between at Green Bay,
Exactly.
at Chicago. Also, trap games are usually home games, and they are coming off of like tough games.
So let me give
you
the one that jumps off the page at me completely, and it is the holy crap, the Buffalo Bills game. The Colts game a few years back where they rolled over and were absolutely dog poop.
We might have the same one.
But this one, to me, it's the end of the 3-game homestand on December 6th.
Yeah.
It's Jacksonville.
Yeah.
It's because that's the one where I'm in the press box sitting by my guy Dex, and I'm like, is this bleeping happening? And Declan's like, damn right, that's happening.
Yeah.
Because let's say you beat Dallas, you beat Carolina, you're feeling pretty damn good, right?
Yeah.
3 games, and now you've gone from the Cowboys, nice win, Carolina, potentially nice win, don't know for sure, but it's Jacksonville.
And you're looking, this is the funny part, like we project this stuff on teams. Are they actually looking ahead in the middle of the third quarter? No, they are not. But in theory, they're looking ahead to that Tom Brady road game the next week against Tampa.
Well, and if you've beaten the Cowboys and Panthers, you for sure, as a human being, are going to be like, oh, awesome. You know what's next? The Jaguars.
Uncle Rico is coming to town.
Yeah, exactly right. So that's the one that absolutely positively, when I look at the Viking schedule, jumps off the page at me.
So here's another thing to know, because I wrote down 2 potential trap games. I did put the home against Atlanta game on. You're kind of ruling that one out because Atlanta's been formidable. Matt Ryan he's a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback.
Right.
Like, they've got weapons.
Yep.
That's not a game. If the Vikings lost that game, you wouldn't be like, whoa, like the Buffalo Bills game. The Jaguars game checks a few different boxes here for trap game qualification. All the things you just said, which are like, on paper, it's a crappy opponent. It's the end of a 3-game homestand. You should be feeling pretty good. Like, you would expect to win those first 2 home games. The Dallas game should be tough, but like you should expect to win those home games, and you're looking ahead to Tom Brady. But here's the other thing. The Vikings are good for a weird AFC loss almost every year. Let's go back the last 4 years, all right?
Yeah, this is a good one. Yeah.
Last year, they go to Kansas City, and they play the Chiefs without the best quarterback in the NFL. They go and they play. It was Matt Moore was the starting quarterback for the Chiefs that day, right?
Yes.
And like the Chiefs had a Super Bowl roster, so don't get me wrong. It wasn't like it wasn't like Pat Mahomes and a bunch of scrubs. But all right, you get a huge break, and Pat Mahomes is out with the knee injury, and you go into Kansas City, and they just, like, the Vikings just couldn't get out of their way in certain spots, and they couldn't stop Matt Moore, and they wound up losing that game. The year before, that Buffalo game that you brought up, that's one of the most egregious and surprising losses I can remember in the last 10 or 15 years of watching the Vikings.
I'm pretty sure it was one of the biggest upsets in terms of spreads in a regular season football game in like 15 years.
It was.
Wasn't it like a 15-point favorite or something in that game?
Yeah.
And they got worked.
And wasn't Tony Romo on color commentary for that game for some reason?
It was a CBS game.
Jim Nantz and Tony Romo.
It was, yes. And it was a terrible game. And that was aggressive loss.
Yeah. So that game, and then you go back the previous couple of years. Again, we're looking at like weird AFC loss every year. The Colts game was another one.
Huge letdown.
The year before that, or it was either 16 or 17. In the only year that I'm missing here is they lost to Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh, like you lose to Pittsburgh, that's not a bad loss,
right?
But like they're good for an AFC loss pretty much every year, and some of those losses, like the Buffalo loss and the Indianapolis loss, are just bad losses at home.
Mm-hmm.
So what would their AFC options be? Well, home against Tennessee in week 3, at Houston in week 4. Neither one of those games is a gimme. And then you get home against Jacksonville in week 13. Am I missing an AFC game in there?
Colts game in week 2. Did you get
the
that
Colts
one?
game in week 2? They have the 3 consecutive AFC games.
Yes.
So of all of those, the one that you would least expect them to lose is probably the Jacksonville game, which makes it the trap game. AFC home game before a big road game against Tampa Bay.
You might beat the Cowboys and Panthers, so you're feeling pretty damn good.
Yeah. So I think, just to go back to that Detroit game, I don't think you can rule out the Detroit game as a categorized trap game just because they are a division opponent. It checks a lot of boxes. You're coming off, you got a bye week, and then you go at Green Bay. So like the entire 2 weeks before that game, you're consumed with resting up during the bye at Green Bay. And then you've got the week after the Detroit game, you've got the Monday Night Football game, primetime at Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And that Detroit game is just sandwiched right between those two tough
Detroit's
road ones.
beating you at home, and Stafford's played some pretty good games here.
Mm-hmm. True.
So if you aren't prepared for that game, something's wrong with you.
But it's just like this. That's the type of game that sneaks up on you on an NFL schedule.
And are you really going to get beat by Matt Patricia at home? I mean, my God, how embarrassing.
It would be bad.
So
says the guy who's wearing a Detroit Lions colored hooded sweatshirt right now, by the way.
Question for you guys off the second half of the schedule. Given that every year there are teams that we expect to be good that fall off the table, and there are teams that we expect to be bad that overachieve, and ordinarily one or two has a great season. In the second half of the Viking schedule, give me the 2 games that you think are going to surprise us the most as to the quality of the opponent on the day they're played.
So, like on paper right now, you think, oh my God, that's an easy
like
win.
Jacksonville, they're going to kill Jack.
I think Teddy Bridgewater is a winning DNA quarterback. I think he brings winning DNA to a locker room. I think he brings accuracy to a passing game. And if you look at some of his clutch or crunch time statistics, fourth quarter, third down, he gets better when the pressure starts to mount. And I think a lot of people have just laughed him off because, he only threw 15 touchdown passes or whatever. Like, we look at the fantasy stats and he's not putting up Drew Brees or Ben Roethlisberger numbers. But as far as wins and losses, influence as a leader, influence on a team, everybody that comes into contact with that guy in college and in the NFL leaves better for having been around him. And so I could see that Carolina game. I could see Carolina being a really sneaky team in a division that everyone's talking about. Tampa, everyone's talking about New Orleans, and Atlanta's been this consistently solid team for the most part the last 10 or 15 years. Like, I could see Carolina being a tough one, and I could actually see a scenario, despite everything we are saying about the Lions, in which the Lions, because Matt Stafford stays healthy, Matt Patricia's not as bad as everyone thinks. Like, I could see a scenario in which the Lions are a 500-ish team on the fringe of the wild card race, and that Week 17 game mattering on January 3rd.
How about this one? How about this one for you?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say out of the bye, you're going into Green Bay, and Aaron Rodgers got hurt, so now it's Jordan Love starting.
That'd be a trap.
If you're going into Lambeau and it's a rookie quarterback, is that a trap game?
Yes, absolutely.
That is every recipe for
That's
every recipe for a Packer tongue lashing of, you still couldn't even beat our rookie quarterback coming out of the bye week.
That's an interesting question.
That by definition would be a trap game.
Yeah, the game that I think we might be very surprised by in the second half of the Vikings schedule at Tampa Bay.
Yeah,
you mean that they won't be as good?
Yes, because we're so convinced that Tom Brady's going to go there, and he might be.
I'm not convinced.
Well,
I made that very clear.
It's been talked about quite a bit, and at his age, you know what? It's not going to be surprising if he's just not that good. I think he will be, but I don't know for sure.
Playing in Tampa on December 13th instead of playing in New England, like the older you get, the It's just like any.
But he is an old.
My dad moved to Arizona when he got to be a certain age. Like everyone, him playing in warm weather in December is going to help him quite a bit. So,
but I think we're just all so convinced that the Buccaneers are going to be great, and I think that we're probably reaching a little bit on that.
Is there any chance the Saints in Week 16 could be a lot worse than we think?
Do you think Drew Brees shows some more age? Because if that's the case,
he was so good last year. That dude completed 74% of his passes as a 40-year-old last year. So, I don't know.
I think there's a better chance that in the coming season, Brady falls off the table than Brees does.
I agree with that. I mean, the 3-year age difference matters a hell of a lot more from 40 to 43 than like 29 to 32. So, any other trap games we're missing? Or the
Jacksonville one's the one that pops off at me.
The Gardner Minshew game.
Yeah. By the way, don't misconstrue this episode of Purple Daily to mean that those idiots think the Vikings are going to lose to Jacksonville. If I had to put money on that game right now, there's zero chance I would put money on the Jacksonville Jaguars to win that game.
If they want to think
but it is a trap game.
If they want to think
definition.
that, they can.
That's fine.
It doesn't even deserve an explanation that we're saying because it is a trap game.
And that's the point of betting. You want to put your money on a team that could get you a big payout. That's how I bet.
Like Buffalo did.
Look at me.
Like the Bills did that day at
Can you imagine?
The Vikings here.
I mean, generally, so we used to do our weekly gambling segment during the football season with our friend Todd Furman. And he always used to tell us once a point spread gets to a certain point, like once you're looking at in the NFL, if you start to see minus 14, minus 16, he's like, fade the favorite. So
I love that term.
Some betting advice right here.
Fade the favorite, baby.
So thanks for hanging out with us on Purple Daily. You can click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ScoreNorth, to get that daily Vikings content in your YouTube feed and some gloriously good-looking human beings talking about the Vikings. And same for the podcast, Apple, Spotify, and ScoreNorth.com. We'll see you next